hear me okay. My name is Justin Zambano. I'm the Regional Sales Director for the Northeast for AnyPresence, and I have one of our founders here as well, John Bierman. Come on up.
Come on up.
We'll, of course, both be available for questions after the formal question and answer for the Hangout session as well. What I'm going to do is take you through just an overview of our company, and then I'm going to jump into really a demo of the solution, because I think that's the reason why we're really all here. So just to give you an idea, AnyPresence really enables companies with their mobile application strategy, and we focus on enterprises that really need to connect into enterprise systems, multiple databases, and leveraging predetermined security settings. But we do this as a service. So we are the only mobile platform as a service that really significantly reduces time and cost of building those enterprise class apps with no platform lock-in. What that means is you can receive all of the human readable code along with an SDK library of what you create within our platform so that you can integrate it with any of the code that you've already written outside of AnyPresence. We were founded in late 2010. We're headquartered in Reston, Virginia, and we have former executives from SAP, Oracle, Siebel, and many other enterprise software companies. Okay, so modern mobile app development. We think that this is really broken down into two pieces, and this is what we hear from our customers. One is the user interface. Our platform as a service has complete flexibility when it comes to building out a very slick user interface. We specifically have a web-based designer that has cross-platform user interface prototypes that allow companies that are maybe mid-size range that know that they want to have many components to a user interface set up quickly. They can use a drag-and-drop user interface to build out that UI very quickly. However, there are large enterprises that we work with, some here in the city and some across the country, that have spent a lot of time and resources building out a very slick user interface for their mobile application, and you don't want to take that investment and throw it out. Well, how do you use AnyPresence to leverage that? If you decide to build something within our tool frame, then you're able to fully edit that code outside of AnyPresence and then port it back in as needed. So the crux of our solution is really offering services on the back end. So you talk to a company that says, hey, you know what? I don't just want a very specific user interface that's very slick and has a lot of interesting icons and colors in it. I also need that to be very interactive. For example, the utility companies that we work with have customers that use the solution to pay bills, to report outages, and to view critical usage information about how much electricity they've used. Well, as a result, they're going to need to authenticate into multiple databases with specific roles. Hey, I'm Justin. I live at 90 Fieldview Drive. How much electricity have I used? Well, my utility provider is a huge conglomerate that needs to figure out who I am quickly and connect me to a database quickly. AnyPresence allows companies to set that process up very quickly with a drag-and-drop user interface, no heavy lifting, no coding. And so as a result, you have a very interactive application that not only links into many databases, but also provides things like SMS, push notification, and integration with other services like social media. So what does it do? Key benefits here: it reduces time to market for mobile apps. You can reuse any of these services very quickly. So if you've already built an application and all you need to do is change up logos or change up certain services you've already created, you can do that quickly. You get to leverage all of the systems you've already set up for traditional machines like laptops and desktops. You take that and you can automatically make it mobile ready very quickly. This builds scalable app development process across the organization. You can preserve your intellectual property and your independence and have something that's a very quick framework. I'm going to get into some definitions real fast so that my demo makes sense. This component is called pages. So these are applications. All of these applications have pages. You might have one page that talks about your personal information, another page that talks about your utility information, whatever it might be. Then within each page, we have what we call objects, and these are the entities that the user actually interacts with. So an object might be, hey, I want to pay my bill. You hit the Pay My Bill button. That Pay My Bill button is an object. More importantly, we have data sources. So these are, anything that you need to connect into when it comes to an enterprise data sources. And it's really the place where objects store and retrieve information. This is where the object becomes interactive and actually becomes useful to your end user. And then lastly, we have actions. And actions are functions that are called when an object event occurs. So if I pay my bill, it may automatically send off an email. An action might automatically send off an email to an administrator that might need to process something. Or it might need to send me a text message that said, hey, here's the summary of the bill you paid. That's what an action is. So now that the vocabulary is out of the way, let me go ahead and jump into the software demo. Any organization that wants to run this simply needs to have a machine that runs an internet browser. We created a fictitious company here called Dynacorp for the purposes of this demo. If I'm a Dynacorp developer, all I need is my username and password. AnyPresence by default is hosting all of this, and so all they need to do is sign in. Once signed in, we now see the complete framework and all of the applications that Dynacorp has developed or that may want to develop. Hopefully the screen resolution is looking okay on the screens here. Yep, looks good. So as a result, each one of these tiles or icons that we're looking at represents a different application that Dynacorp may have created. So as you can see, this spans across many different types of industries, and we have a couple of flags here. This publish flag, to us, publish means that it's in production. So this is out to the user community. This telco self-service one is not published. So this is something that developers are working on. So one of the things, or one of the features of this product is you can flip these tiles over and find out what the application is actually doing. This is an employee services application. You can see we put it into production, or we published it in June of 2012. It was last updated in late June. It's an employee self-service app. So it's kind of an HR app where employees can look at company news, they can look at their directory, and they can even do things like approve expense reports and even time off reports and things like that. So let's go ahead and let's preview this right within the application, because we've done some development with it and we want to see what this looks like. This particular app is actually HTML5 enabled. However, it could also be deployed natively to iOS or Android and the latest and greatest devices that we're all developing towards. So as a result, if I'm a Dynacorp employee and I haven't signed in, I have access to information that maybe the public has access to. For example, Dynacorp wants to tell the world that open enrollment ends today for them. This object that I just clicked on might be linking to, I don't know, their website. I can go back and find out that, hey, you know what, let's click on this object. It might link to another place or another website, and it tells us that Dynacorp won an award saying that it's one of the best multinationals to work for. All of that's nice, but I actually work for Dynacorp and want to get some more information from them. So let me go ahead and sign in. This is where we start to see that you can connect into these enterprise systems. So I'll sign in as Jason, and once I sign in, as long as I get the username and password correct, I'm going to get more information. So as a result, I talked about that vocabulary before. We now have more pages or more components that are available to us, and we'll have more objects available as well. These objects can also be controlled in a very secure way. So I now have access to the directory page because I've logged in as an employee. I'm going in and I'm being seen as an employee of Dynacorp in the background, and I now have access to all of these good-looking people that I work with. For example, if I want to go ahead and find out where Jane works and maybe have her help me with a project that I'm working on, all of these buttons that we see pop up, if I'm using, for example, an iPhone, are automatically going to adhere and configure to that device. So this phone number, for example, will turn into a hot button and I'd be able to touch it and make a phone call immediately. We can go into things like an outbox. This is where me as the employee can go ahead and submit a new time off request, or I can submit a new vacation request. I can submit my expense report. This follows any sort of approvals management hierarchy that any organization might have. I can look at benefits that are specific to me, and I can pull in charts and interesting graphics here to find out what my benefits are because open enrollment ends today and maybe I want to change some things up. To continue with this theme of role-based security, I'm going to go ahead and sign out. I'll sign in one more time as Susan. Susan is Jason's boss. So she wants to go in and approve some information for him. So once I sign in as Susan, what you'll see here is I have more availability, I have more information, I have an inbox. This is something that Jason doesn't have access to because he doesn't have the right level of approvals. Susan does, so she has an inbox to be able to approve expense reports. If there were expense reports logged in the data system, they would pop up here. As a result, you can make this very specific to whoever your user might be. And these applications can either be run internally or they can be sort of a business to consumer application as well. Like I said, we work with a lot of hospitals, we work with a lot of utility companies, and those are more public facing. So let me give you an idea of how all of this is built. I just need to navigate around this WebEx toolbar here. So I'm going to close that application, and I want to say, hey, you know what? Let's see how AnyPresence actually built this out. I click on it, and you'll see all of the components of our development framework available here. First thing you'll want to do, of course, is set up your data sources. You go into the Data Sources tab, and you have modules that allow you to connect into many different types of data sources. We've pulled up specific ones for this demo, like SAP, Salesforce, SQL. We also have specific connectors for applications with Oracle and DB2. Typically, we're connecting into data sources that are REST web services enabled, so RESTful web services, APIs, any data source that allows that type of API, we can connect into. Once your data sources are completed, you then start to integrate them very tightly with objects. So those are the entities that your users are going to interact with. You want to make sure they're connected to a data source so that they're interactive. For example, we pull into the user object. We have many different modules in the user object. All of the fields that are pulling in from this data source, we can look at the specific data. For example, we saw Susan and Jason earlier. Since Susan has a manager role, she's going to have access to more data than Jason will. Very simple way of showing how we can leverage a predetermined LDAP and make that data actually matter. You can put in other authorization parameters based on whatever security you might have. You can manage your query scope so that you're pulling in the right data if this database has more information than you need. You can attach events to this where you have actions to make sure that if you have an if-then action where, hey, you know what? If Susan goes ahead and and approves my vacation request, I want to get a text message. That might work with another data system. Very easy to connect here. Lastly is your user interface. So you can code outside of this if you would like, or you can use all of the components that we have available for your UI. You simply take a component, drag it over into your blueprint. You can then pull up many different components on your pages, see how they connect to different data sources. Each one of these is going to be actually very dynamic, and it's going to allow you to look at different data sources very quickly. You set that up on the right-hand side. You set up your security, your data systems, your visibility rules. You can update this and change this. Everything's draggable, everything's clickable. And so lastly, you might want to say, all right, great, I built out 80% of what I need in here. And I got 9 developers over here who can build out a real slick user interface for my demanding users. Wonderful. As a result, we can change up themes. We've got hundreds of components to change up logos and colors and those types of things. But if you have something that's more complex than that from a UI standpoint, you're going to want to go ahead and say, hey, I want to deploy this natively to iOS, natively to Android, and HTML5 all at the same time. I check the boxes. I want to preview this in my test environment. What will happen as soon as we hit this preview button is in the cloud, our infrastructure is compiling all of the code associated to what you built within our framework. This example is going to spit out something related to HTML5, so we'll see JavaScript and CSS pop up. And once that's coded and delivered, I'll click on the code for all of you developers out there that know JavaScript so you can see this is human readable, comes along with an SDK library, and can be integrated with anything. The JavaScript code doesn't mean much to me because I don't code in that, but for all of you out there that want to see this beautiful code, I will show it to you in about 25 seconds. But I want to stay fair to time here and just jump into question and answer as this gets developed. It takes about another minute here. So let me jump into question and answer. I know I spoke quickly, but wanted to get a lot in a short time frame. Here's the JavaScript code, by the way. Beautiful, huh? All right. So that comes along with an SDK library, so you can code back in and out. So we propose that we can speed up, essentially, the mobile application development of your company. And if anyone works for any company right now, they're going to realize that deploying to these types of mobile devices really is the future.
So who is your customer? Is it a developer trying to develop an application and sell it, or is it an enterprise trying to develop applications for its internal use?
It's both.
Yes.
So we have customers, for example, that do both. We have hospitals, for example, that we work with that have a development team that uses this platform to build out applications for their staff to do things like you saw here. However, they also have applications out there. City of Hope is one of the customers, one of the hospitals, where the public can utilize a mobile app to easily navigate themselves on their campus. They can register as a new patient. They can sign up for appointments with doctors that they meet with frequently. They can access a doctor app. So it's both. It's both consumers of an enterprise and employees of an enterprise.
It would be a great platform for like a digital ad agency, right, which specializes on the UI and could code the UI, but maybe doesn't specialize as much on the back end complication.
Okay.
Right, we could accelerate that aspect
Now,
of the development.
if I have a back end developed already, like how much of this can I leverage? If most of the work is in the front end, how much of this is going to be useful to me?
What's going to be useful about it is if you use our platform to integrate what you've already done in the back end and you build the objects here, you can then utilize them forever and for future apps. Whereas if you have another application you need to build in the future, you don't have to do all that back end work again. It's all here, it's all organized. Because you can reuse all of those objects. There's a question over here.
Yeah, the iOS and the Android apps, do they actually run as native applications on the phone, or are you just embedding iOS and Android style sheets to run native instances of like a virtual middleware on the phone?
Nope, it's a choice, but if your development needs are to have a native app, this will spit out the Objective-C and that UX code so that you can then deploy it with your developer account to the Apple Store, as an example. So it does both. Yes?
Do you have an on-premise installation?
We do have an on-premise installation model. By default, this is as a service. That makes me just want to pull up one more slide because that's a really good point. I had a PowerPoint running over here at some point. There it is. So you can deploy this on-premise. What's behind that question, I think for some, that maybe the person next to you that didn't ask it, is, all right, with the architecture behind this, how do we make all of this run? And by default, sort of our design time framework, what I just demoed to you, that is what we host and what is typically on our infrastructure. However, the runtime component, that can be on any server you would like. And from a security standpoint, this allows organizations to have the runtime component of this stored in the most secure manner. But both of these can be installed on-premise if you would like.
So it also doesn't lock you into us for the long term, right? So we talked about that no lock-in option, right? So if you were to go with us and decided to separate at some point in the future, or decided you needed to customize beyond the scope of our platform, you would get the native code, right, and be able to do with it what you wanted within your own network.
Yes?
What are your utility customers specifically?
So the utility customers that we're working with are mainly, smaller utility companies, typically in the Northern Virginia area, because that's where we started. We haven't jumped in any big conglomerates yet, but we're about to. We're in talks with a lot. Yes.
How does this compare to someone like an Antenna Software or Verivo or other enterprise mobile application platforms?
Great question. So the main difference is, one, we're a platform as a service. Those companies aren't. The other big difference is those companies, although they let you build out and code to whatever your imagine might want, the end result of it is going to be a proprietary framework that is code that sort of locks you into that proprietary framework. This is not. If you build anything in this, you at the end result receive it in human readable code of sort of commodities like JavaScript, Objective-C, CSS. That's probably the main difference.
So the server side, you get Ruby on Rails or Java, right? And on the UI side, you get the native code.
Right.
Right, so there's no interpretation layer, any VM setting up to make it hard to get out.
And we're priced at a wallet that can afford, an enterprise application, whereas those organizations are priced at a much different price point.
One more.
One more question.
Yeah, go ahead.
If you've got existing code, how do you integrate it with your system? Because you see you're dragging and dropping elements to create an app. What if you've already got code written in Objective-C? What do you do? How do you, can you merge it together, or what would you have to write everything from scratch again?
No, you can merge it together. So anything that you've already written, say there's components you want to create with this drag and drop user interface. At the end, what happens is you receive that code that I just generated, and you can take that and then integrate it along with an SDK library to what you've already written and have an app that can run anywhere you would like to run on any server. Does that make sense? We'll be around for hangout and question and answer. We look forward to speaking with you.
Thank you.